Hey, there are questions about taxes that we know. There are questions that we don't even know to ask. We are going to talk to someone today that is uniquely qualified to talk to us as home care owners. That happens today on ActionCast. Hey, welcome, welcome. We are blessed here at ActionCast to have a good array of conversations on a good array of topics that helps home care owners. And today, this is a topic that is of interest to you if you are thinking about starting a home care business or if you have been in home care for 20 years. It is tax questions. And I'm going to start the conversation by saying, please know that this is a conversation about tax questions, things that commonly come up. There's going to be discussion about best common practices, general knowledge, and things that as a business owner you should look at. This cannot be direct tax advice for you because we are not aware of your specific state, your circumstances, the things going on directly for you. So this is advice that we can give, not me. I'm not going to do that to you. It's going to be Debbie, I promise. but this is advice and this is best practices from years of dealing specifically with this, specifically questions that she knows owners should be asking. And the question you should be asking as the home care owner right now is, well, why Debbie Shaw? Why is Debbie Shaw the person that should be talking about it? And that's what I want you to hear about because it's kind of crazy. It's like the perfect mix. I want to introduce Debbie. She is the owner of By Your Side Home Care. And it's in Oregon, right? Right, Debbie?
Yes.
Yes, in Oregon. And first, Debbie is also a CPA that owns a CPA firm and the owner of By Your Side Home Care. Those two things. And those two roads do not normally directly link. So that has to be a story in and of itself. So first of all, welcome to the program, Debbie. And please introduce yourself and tell us how you came from what I assume you must probably started as a CPA, I'm going to guess, and got to home care. So how did that happen? Tell us about that journey.
Well, thank you, Katie. Yeah, it is a kind of a crooked road. I started about a little over 40 years ago. I know I don't look that old, right? Up in Seattle, I was working for a large national firm up there. And out of college, and I was up there and I started having babies and I got on the mommy track. And after about 10 years, I decided to move back home to Oregon. And I brought some of my clients with me down here and started a CPA firm here in Oregon and had some folks here working with me with a lot of the local people. About 6 years ago, or no, 15 years ago, I was working with a nonprofit, and on the board was a husband of and wife, and they were having an IRS audit, and they needed some help, and so they came to me, and so I got to know Carol and Mike, and they were the owners of a home care. In fact, they were just starting it up. And so they became my clients, and I worked with them for about 10 years. At the end of that, they decided they were going to move and sell, and I started kind of working with them on the sell. And one of the benefits of being a CPA is you get to see the real numbers behind businesses. And I could see it was another one of those businesses where you get to give back to the community in so many ways with hiring and with helping people. And it was, it had the ability to make some money and be able to give back. So we talked to them about buying that. And that's how we ended up with a home care. One of the benefits was she had it set up so there were already people in place that were doing the day-to-day operations. So that made it a little easier to get into.
That's awesome. So, all right. So you started it as from that CPA and very strong. obviously you basically had the number questions down before you had the is this the business I want question down. So home care owners obviously usually come in it from a totally different perspective. Nobody, very few people are thinking about filing their taxes when they get their first client, only and maybe from a fear standpoint of, oh my God, what is this going to be? What is this going to be like? So, but it's intimidating. There's no way getting out of it. You're going to have to deal with it every year, no matter whether you like it or not. It's going to, it's just part of the facts of life. So coming into that as a person, whether you're thinking about starting a business, really any kind of business, I know this part is general, or you have an operating home care agency, what is the tax questions that you should be asking yourself? What are those things, just the core anchor questions that that person should be looking at uh, right in that moment? Like, what are those questions?
Well, that's great. And the first thing is to ask the questions, because there are a lot of things at the very beginning when you're starting a company that you should be thinking about: the form of business. There are some defaults there. What should I incorporate? Should I be an LLC? All of those kinds of things that really it's best if you get some input from your CPA on that. And also, when you're expanding a business, for those that are already in and people are thinking about, oh, I'm going to expand into another state, or I'm going to, do a care home, or, I hear a lot of those kinds of things. It's important that you talk about, how should I own real estate? Or even if you have a home care and you're going to buy the office or whatever, how should I hold that? And there are some rules of thumb and some things that we would talk about when we're looking at that. Generally, I talk to people about maybe starting an LLC, and then with that, we can grow and change the tax structure without changing the name and all your marketing and everything. So that's one of the things that we look at. And then just from a tax perspective, that very first tax return that you file, there are everybody kind of thinks that, oh, you just can plug in the numbers and that's it. But there are some decisions that we make. I talk without getting, you can have the cash method of accounting, which I don't want to get too deep into all of those exactly, but you should be able to understand the basics of it. Is just that, you take the money into income as you get the cash, and the expenses as you pay it, basically, or the accrual. And that's a decision that you make with that first tax return, and a conversation that you could have with your tax preparer.
Okay. And when you say, okay, be willing to ask these questions, are you talking about just having those moments where you sit down with a piece of paper and write out all the things you would wonder about? Who are you asking those questions to? Like, at what point, what is the simplest mistakes, those early mistakes that they can start, that's easy to avoid, not only with asking those questions, but kind of like even knowing who to get involved? Because if you're starting, you want to make $1 million, but you haven't made $1 million. So
Right.
so there's the obvious feasibility of what you can do, as far as like who you can go ask and who you can do this. So is a lot of that knowledge acquired by simple looking into it? Like, where do you get the answers to those kind of questions when you're asking them?
So that's a great question. And, lots of times you can get some general kinds of ideas on the types of questions to ask. But a lot of my clients who are starting a business or whatever, or I might have a new client come in and they just want a consultation. And we sit down and we talk about, well, what's your plans? How quickly do you think you're going to grow? How fast are you going to grow? What sort of assets are you going to have in this business? Should you have two separate businesses, or should it all go into one? And then we work with the attorneys, because the attorneys will have the legal side of things, and we can talk tax and lots of times I'll talk directly with the attorney about, how to set things up when we're starting out. And then, of course, there's always the how do I set up my books. And Jeff did an excellent job talking through the way that they should be. And I'll say, for tax purposes, we would look at a little bit differently. But what you really want to do is set it up for management purposes. And that's what Jeff was talking about. So management meaning, what are my costs that are associated with this hour of service? And that way you can make your decisions about price. So he was spot on about that. And when I talk about the difference between cash and accrual methods of accounting, you want to look at that on the accrual. In other words, you want to match the income with the expense. And lots of times tax returns are done differently on the cash method. And so it may not translate quite as easily. So it's just something for people to be aware of.
That's awesome. And what you said about sometimes people just have a consultation, that is that first step, and that might be the thing you need for the first little bit in business, is just to have that. So just because maybe you're not in a position to fully retain a monthly accounting or CPA firm to handle your accounts, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be willing to pursue seeking advice and counsel from those that understand that side of the business, because what might be a few $100s up front can save you so much heartbreak and just frustration on the other end of the spectrum.
That's so true. And I've been involved with the unraveling side, and that costs more and it's more difficult. So having that upfront discussion is definitely good. There are several things, that also when you set up your payroll, and depending on who you use for that, consider there are some things kind of unique in our business, or I should say that pertain to our business, where we typically hire caregivers that maybe aren't making $100,000 a year. And so they might qualify for a work opportunity tax credit. And that's an underutilized credit that can be a pretty good benefit on the tax return. And it's one of the things that I have seen that has been missed in the past, because we don't do it at the tax return level initially. It needs to be done with payroll. So it's just one of those little tips.
Oh, that's really awesome. So for home care owners specifically, what is that one of those simple things that they can do? What is the next step where home care owners should, or maybe, we're talking about like most people listening to this, I don't know the percentages, but the majority of people are neck deep in business right now. Like they've been in they have filed taxes a few times and stuff like that. What should and they do have a working budget, so they have an operating budget. What should they have as far as, if you're a business that's operating with, let's say, several caregivers, a small staff of caregivers, and at least one person helping you, one or two admin staff. Let's make it that. What should it look like as far as should you employ a CPA firm? Like, should there be a monthly? Like, what does the nature of that business look like typically in a healthy way? Like, what does that healthfully look like to an owner?
So they should have somebody who's keeping up their records on a monthly basis, and obviously they'll have payroll and have that integrated. They should have an outside CPA or somebody. So in our business, they're depending on the state, they're more regulated in some states. Here in Oregon we are, some states not so much, for doing tax returns. And so I'll say that there's two approaches from people who do taxes. One is compliance. Let's get your tax return done, get it done by April 15th, be done. Then there are others who typically the CPA will fall under that, and sometimes other professionals will, where they're more about coaching the businesses. And when you're looking for someone to partner with you, it's really a good idea to find someone like that. I get the calls from my clients throughout the year, and they'll say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think?" And sometimes it's very tax related, sometimes it's not. Like I say, we see hundreds, thousands of businesses doing all, we're confidential, of course,
Yeah.
but it does add to our wealth of knowledge on how things operate and how they turn out at the end. So that's kind of what I would recommend, is that they do go that direction.
Yes. And what does that look like? Who are you? And I can truly speak for I probably ignorance is considered a negative word, but in this case for me it's very accurate. And I'm personalizing it to me, so nobody else take offense to it. But from the ignorance of somebody who um, is good at working hard,
Mhm.
but not good at understanding that hard work isn't all it is. It takes more than hard work and less than hard work sometimes. Like my mentality is just do it, do it, do it. But sometimes I'm destroying myself to accomplish something that there was just a much simpler methodology to get it accomplished. Um, and so, what from a home care owner's perspective, who are they looking at? Is this a they need to get in the I want to say phone book, but man, that's old school. Are they looking up for a CPA firm? Are they looking who is the CPA that best tends to serve home care owners by and large?
So referrals, of course, are the best
Mm-hmm.
because you can get a little bit of a real thing. I'll say you want somebody with some experience, with some gray hairs, you might
Mm-hmm.
say. Too big of a firm, you may, to start out with, might be overkill, and you might get left out of, because you're smaller and starting. So I would look for a smaller firm,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody that has maybe a couple staff. Depends on the size of the area. Ours is a pretty small area, so that would be more typical.
Okay. And so, but they don't need to be anything other than a CPA. Like there, it doesn't need to say specifically serving a certain business community or a certain, like we like to do this, or
That would be best if they did. If
hmm
they, of course, if they had experience in home care. If I'm looking for someone to work with, like in my business, I like somebody who's been in industry, meaning like owned a business and kind of understands the issues for a business owner, as well as somebody that's been like I am on the outside as well.
hmm
So you kind of do it like you would look for a doctor, where you're going to get some referrals. You want somebody you can talk to. That's another issue. Some of us will do only, jargon speak and try to make ourselves sound important. That's not typical, but there are, that's true in every industry,
it's a
So
personality. It's not industry
it
specific.
is. And, so if you can find somebody that you feel comfortable talking to, I will say that we tend to be busy. So it's good to not be making constant phone calls with every little question, but being able to set meetings, quarterly meetings, or whatever, to go over whatever you have, or of course, if you have something coming up. So.
Okay, awesome. And so is there what are next steps as far as from a home care owner perspective, and where should an owner go if they either to tell the health of the CPA that they have, or to when they start looking into that CPA relationship, um, is there a genuine, how are they going to price their services? Is it going to be like by the business volume that they're bringing in, or like, is there any red flags as far as if they say, oh, we like to do it this way? Is there anything that's like general best practices in that area that, because some these are the kind of things that I feel like, and I've seen, I've experienced, and I'm sure you've heard horror stories about it, where people can really get taken advantage of because they don't know the nature of the business itself. It feels very alien and intimidating to them. So is there any big red flags that a business owner should be looking for that CPA that they go talk to, or that firm?
So the place that I mostly see the red flags is if somebody gets in trouble with the IRS. And if someone is trying to you create a fear in you,
Right.
that's not good. And they say, oh, pay me 3,000 or 8,000, and I'll get you. One of those kinds of things. That's obviously a red flag. We tend to usually have kind of an hourly billing, and you can find out what that is by asking. But honestly, it's really about how much value we can bring. Usually, a goal is to have you do as much work as you can to bring it to us, so we can just use our knowledge to help you, and not try to churn hours and create a billing. So I would say reputation and referrals is probably the best way to find that out.
Yeah. And that's good wisdom too. Basically, if you are talking to somebody and they feel like they're trying to scare you into something or bleed you into, no,
Right.
let us do that. It'll only just be like, then they're trying to just milk something, and they're not offering value to where they're getting sufficient on their own. I like that. That's good. Um, Okay, so to land the plane, to kind of bring it around here, so an owner has heard this, and they've seen several things that, or they know that this is an area that they either need to make that connection and get that CPA, or they really need to be willing to ask the questions before expanding their business. Because I'm sure you see a ton of challenges with expansion in general, where
Mhm.
people um, overreach, or they go into an area that they shouldn't, or this or that. What are what is some wise counseling, good advice you can give them based on what are some good steps, good next steps for that owner right there that finds themselves that, man, I do need to get a handle on this situation, or I haven't even finished off paying off last year's taxes or something, like what is good next steps to kind of to bring the reins in on this?
So obviously, if they do have someone to talk through some of the issues that they're having, I would like to touch on a couple things that
Mhm.
an outside CPA is probably not going to see, or maybe not even ask as you grow. For instance, if you get to that point where you're having more than 50 employees, and you start getting more, you may have the what they call the ACA mandate. And so that's not something we would typically monitor. And it's something that as the owner, you need to kind of be aware of, and then you can bring it to a CPA's attention. So some of those things that I would probably, say, there are several other areas like that as you grow, that you would want to just ask the question, is there something else I should be thinking about? The state taxes is another issue. There's different ways to handle that. So those are just questions, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, well, but that's right. Like that's the thing. This is a conversation to provide the correct questions, not
Mhm.
necessarily because the answers are going to be specific to your business. Like the answers can only be specific. We're unique people, and we create unique and beautiful things. That's the way we were designed. And our businesses are going to represent that. But asking that right question is what helps us get it to our own finish line, to that place where we can feel a little bit more confident in our decisions. Especially, and I do feel like, I know we've talked a lot about opening a business, but expanding a business, there's a lot of uncertainty there because you have built something that of its own is stable. And so there is an inherent intimidation of reaching past itself, and maybe it can't support the weight I'm fixing to put on it. So recognizing that there are specific tax questions that need to be addressed before you look into this, or these diversified income streams, just knowing to go to your CPA and even ask, like we're both part of Action Leaders, and we ask, having business owners that you can ask, hey, what was your experience here? And they can tell you, oh, this really got us. Because in you get a room of 20 people, some of them, they may not be a CPA, but they're going to be numbers junkies, and they're going to like watch, like Misty Carver. We had a discussion with her the other day. She's not a CPA by trade. She's a math teacher by trade.
She loves numbers.
Man, she loves those numbers. And,
yes.
And I guarantee you and her can have a conversation that I'm like, okay, I'm the wallpaper here. But it makes a lot of sense. And I'm the same way with her. I can have conversations with her, and you can see her love for numbers, and she has tracked those things. So being willing and knowing to ask those questions is very important.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's okay.
That's the thing. And I do think that is pulling the fear out of it and recognize that this is just a part of business. It's like having to put gas in your car. It's not necessarily going to be the most glorious part of owning a cool car, but it is very functionally part of how it gets from point A to point B. And in our ecosystem, taxes are that thing. They provide us the ability and the financial infrastructure as a country to be where we're at, and that's true wherever country you're in. I mean, that's the ecosystem of government, for better or worse.
Right. And I'll say one other thing to make sure that you talk about is your plans. I end up being a confidant for a lot of businesses who are saying, hey, I'm thinking about selling in a couple of years. What do you think? What do I need to do to get there? Now, there are other aspects of that they should be talking to other folks about, but certainly you should be comfortable enough with the person you're working with to say those things and be able to talk through what's that going to look like. Obviously, what's the tax structure on that and how will that impact me? So that's another big area to think about, past the growth to the sale.
That's good. That's a lot of wisdom, is understanding that your CPA should be one of those confidants in your life that you tell that level of things to, and that they should be your counsel in that area. If you're not confident to go to this person and either tell them stuff or have them speak into your life and say, well, maybe you should look at this, this, and this, then that's not the person you need to be in that business relationship with. So that's a good outline for who you should be working with.
Yeah, I think even Jeff was talking about that he had a CPA on his board at that time, and I've served on some boards to just kind of give some different insights as well. So I think that that's something to look at.
That's awesome. That's true. Thank you very much. This has been an amazing action cast. I always walk away with more understanding for home care than I started with. And it's amazing how you can have a tax conversation and it still be the same. It's still that I appreciate your heart for wanting to join an industry where there was, like you said, give back at every level. You can employ people, you take care of people at where they're at in their stage of life. And that's wonderful about our industry. Another wonderful thing about our industry is it has the potential to produce fantastic revenue streams. And it is an engine that produces a lot of commerce. And that is to be respected. It's a wonderful part of it, but we also need to treat it properly in order to maintain that profitability. Jeff, here you keep speaking about Jeff Weierberg, who was at the conference that we were both at, and he said his thing is the mission is in the margins. What we're able to do is in that part that we retain and kind of keep in our quarter. So don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to do what it takes to maintain what allows you to do the mission that you're ultimately, that we're all really here for. So thank you for that. And thank you for supporting Homecare Owners at the level where to get the conversation started in a healthy way, to let know that the next right question to ask and the next right thing to look forward to in a CPA. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I look forward to having you back because tax time will be here before you know it, and there will be 1,000 more questions.
And there's a lot of changes on the horizon. So
yes. Yeah, that was actually one of the conversations. If y'all want to hear about, she talked about like changes on the horizons, and I was like, oh, spicy.
Yeah,
but, who knows? But I don't know. It might not age well though. Things change so much. But anyway, this has been a wonderful conversation. Stay tuned. We have these action casts every week. We talk to real home care owners that are where they are because of just the little simple steps, asking the next right question, getting from point A to point B. I appreciate you being here with us. Thank you, Debbie, once again. And we will see everyone on the next edition of Action Cast.
Thank you.